Hey, it's State of State. We got your Nittany Lion update. It's a football discussion with Tom and Justin, so kick back and press play.
With former Penn State and NFL defensive back Justin King, I'm Tom Hannafin. This is State of State. This podcast is presented by BetOnline. Football is back, and BetOnline is your number one information source for all your sports wagering with all the up-to-the-minute stats, news, scores, and matchup breakdowns. Get the latest game odds, spreads, and totals from the NFL and college football right at your fingertips with BetOnline's real-time updates, stats, news, and odds. From week 1 all the way to the college football playoff and the Super Bowl, BetOnline gives you the access to the best football promotions and contests available anywhere online. Head to betonline.ag today or use your mobile device to get in on the action. Remember, use our promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. State of State is presented by BetOnline, where the game starts. Also, State of State is a proud supporter of Blue White Outfitters. Blue White Outfitters was created as a retail shop meant to highlight the confidence, competitiveness, and fearlessness of the elite athletes found throughout the history of Penn State University. Check out the latest Lockdown U and Lawn Boys merchandise now. All sales from Blue White Outfitters directly benefit Penn State student athletes. Visit www.bluewhiteoutfitters.com today. And if you're looking for the perfect beer for Penn State football season, we've got you covered with the State IPA. Special thanks to our friends at Funk Brewing for creating the best tailgate and game day beer for Nittany Lion fans. State IPA is available now at beer distributors, grocery stores, Funk's tap rooms, plus select bars and restaurants. Visit www.funkbrewing.com/beers/state-IPA to learn where and how you can get State IPA. Check out the link in the description of this podcast for more information. Must be 21 years or older to purchase. Please drink responsibly. Number 6, Penn State is back in action this week. This Saturday at 3:30 p.m. Eastern on the Big Ten Network, Penn State hosts FBS opponent UMass. UMass enters the game 1-6. Penn State undefeated right now and getting back into play after their bye week. Just a little housekeeping note for all of our viewers and listeners. This Saturday, immediately following the UMass game, we will once again be doing a live recap, a live post-game show for Penn State versus UMass on our YouTube channel. So that video is already up on our channel, so you can turn on notifications, of course, subscribe, like us while you're at it, rate us, comment, everything across the board. We really appreciate it. And we hope as many of you as possible are able to tune in this Saturday. If you jump in the comments section, we'll answer as many of your questions as humanly possible. We really appreciate what you guys did, especially after the Northwestern game. So we're looking forward to doing that again for UMass. Coming out of the bye week, Justin, it was a chance for the team to regroup. We talked about it a lot, a chance for the team to get healthy as well. We talked about it after the Northwestern game, an injury to Katron Allen, an injury to JB Nelson. Trey Wallace is still recovering from an injury, and also just overall bumps and bruises, the team getting back closer to 100% before, as you described it, the gauntlet run in the second half of the season that's upcoming. And now we know Ohio State on the other side of this, the game at Columbus, is going to be a part of Big Noon Kickoff. So all eyes are going to be on that matchup, I presume, against two undefeated teams. So most of this perspective for the UMass game is through the lens of how is everything going to line up for the Ohio State game the week after. But right now, hearing how the team has been over the bye week, what have you heard? How do you feel about things now heading into UMass?
I think anytime you come off a bye week and like that extra just time to prepare and for your guys to just rejuvenate a little bit is a good thing, right? We're still coming off of, an undefeated start. Have an opponent in UMass. Again, you have to take care of every opponent on the weekend, but it's UMass. You're coming out the full strength and having a clear path of what you need to fix from the first 4 games. Like we saw from Coach Franklin, some of the fan murmurs of, throwing the ball deep regardless of what's happening, and just maybe some of the impatience of how the offense is operating. I think we'll see just a different gel of the offense and how they operate in the second half of the season. But coming off of a bye week is a beautiful thing, man. You just get a new spark of energy amongst the coaches, the players, just all around, because little bit of time away goes a long way in the middle of a long football season.
I think an important thing about this upcoming weekend is the return of wide receiver Trey Wallace, Harrison Wallace III. Rarely does James Franklin go out publicly and talk about guys' availability when it is not a season-ending injury, but he did say, I forget if it was in the lead up to Northwestern or after Northwestern, oh, we'll have Trey back in a week or two. So he said the same thing this past Tuesday in his press conference that Trey Wallace is good to go for UMass. Specifically, from Trey Wallace, do you need to see a lot? Do you want to see him get back to being that possession receiver, move the sticks receiver for this offense?
I think you want to just see efficiency and productivity from all the receivers, to be completely honest. Himself, Keandre, the tight ends. You just want to see the offense working and hitting on all cylinders when you're just talking about just executing, right? Whether it's 3rd and 6, just not really blips and moving the chains throughout the series, and just clean football. That's what I would like to see. Not really to single out any receiver. I mean, I would like to see Dante Cephas get in here and be like a prime possession receiver. I mean, there's just a lot of talent that's in that I don't want to say that mid tier, but that upper mid tier type of receiver where they have to separate themselves to be able to make plays. I think that's the one piece of the Penn State offense that is holding us back a little bit at this moment. But at the same time, first 4 games, I feel good moving into this week. But I wouldn't put the pressure on one receiver. I would put it on the whole room.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. It's not necessarily on one person. And the thing at the end of the day is that you and I continue to talk about is that this is not a bad offense. This is not an offense that is struggling to put up points. I mean, 30 plus in what is it, 12, 13 consecutive games? I forget what it is. It's somewhere in that neighborhood. But like, it's not that they're struggling to put up points. It's just that I think there are people who thought when Drew Aller became the starting quarterback that this would turn into a version of like Caleb Williams or something. And it would just be 400-yard passing games, 5 touchdowns, like that. It would just be bananas, video game type numbers with the passing game. And that's not the case. But the thing that James Franklin talked about in his press conference, and the question was posed by the phenomenal Thomas Frankara, friends at Blue White Illustrated, is that there's balance within the offense. And you, Justin, always talk about offenses have identity. You're either, we've talked about, oh, you're a tempo offense and you go no huddle and you move quick, or you're committed to running the football and doing minimal play action from under center, something like that. You have a distinct identity. This is what we do well. Penn State does multiple things well. What's wrong with that?
There's nothing wrong with it, especially when you're executing at a high clip, and we can just pull. Like we've talked about the Shanahan tree, or just the Dolphins offense, and how Mike McDaniels runs it down there, and Kyle Shanahan out in San Francisco. And when you think about the way that they ask their quarterbacks to operate, they don't ask them to be like Superman back there, right? It's like, take what that defense gives you, and we're going to approach it and attack them the way that they're susceptible. And like playing that way, the quarterback in those systems typically takes a backseat to their premier talents. They're just not running around. It's not an ISO game. It's more of a triangle offense if you want to compare it to like a basketball thing of Phil Jackson. And so with that, you operate within the system, but you have efficiency. And I think sometimes when we see that, and there's maybe drops in the series, or things aren't working well in the run game, you start to question what's actually happening. But they have been very balanced in how they approach the offense or approach their game plan since the season has started. But when you want to just see just more efficiency through that, I think it will be clear of like, hey, this is a balanced attack offense, and this is how they're going to operate. I think sometimes we've gotten a little critical, myself included, because when you're going after that balanced attack, you're looking for things that operate at an efficiency level that's higher than average, right? Because when you're doing different things, you want to kind of be a jack of all trades and still be successful in those key areas on the offense. So as we continue to see them do that, that's exactly what you want, is to have a balanced offense so that the defense doesn't know how to game plan against you, have any beads on how you're coming into the game, and you can always take what the defense is giving you.
And that's exactly what Drew Aller has been doing. And I talked about the balance that James Franklin talked about. His quote on Tuesday was, We have the ability to run and pass. It's as good of balance as I've had here or that I've ever been around. We have areas where we're still searching for, where our ability to run and pass is problematic. He meant for the defense. It shows up in short yardage situations. That makes you difficult to defend. Our ability to dictate a game based on how we run the ball and not get away from it has been really good. And also throwing the ball for a high percentage and protecting the ball. There's room for growth in terms of the total package. The balance we're able to exhibit on first and second down, even third down, it makes us hard to defend. I love all of the above because, again, Drew Aller is yet to commit a turnover as a Penn State Nittany Lion, and in his 5 starts, even better. Yes, I think there's plenty of people that are saying, well, the rushing game's not putting up a tremendous amount per rush or even gaudy rushing yards per game. But the thing I've been encouraged by is that you've seen Nick Singleton and Katron Allen get a steady diet of the running game, 15 carries or more each in the games where both of them have played. Obviously, Katron Allen was injured against Northwestern. We don't know if we're going to see him against UMass, and if he does play, how much, considering Ohio State is looming. Is it another day where Nick Singleton gets a ton? Do we see a lot more Trey Potts? If this is a runaway, do you start getting lower on the depth chart? You see Tank Smith get involved. You see some of the freshmen that they're excited about getting involved. Who knows? But that commitment to the run game, that they didn't abandon it against Northwestern, and they're just going to make you stop that in the third and fourth quarter when you're worn down. I love that aspect. As a defender, can you articulate a little bit about what James Franklin was discussing in terms of the balance and what they're able to exhibit on first and second down and even third down, that total package? Can you explain that a little bit more?
We hear the saying sometimes in football, keeping the defense honest, right? Like sometimes you'll see a 7-on-7 games in high school, they might run a quarterback draw because everybody's dropping. It's just not necessarily real football. So to make sure that the defense is covering every inch of the field, you have to make sure that they're playing discipline throughout the run game, through the screens and the flat and just those different areas so that there's always a stress on the defense that they're reading the keys and like, hey, this offense has every door open available to them in their arsenal. And when that happens, it makes the defense play sound football, which is like slows them down just a tad bit where you can't anticipate what's going to happen, make jumps on plays or jumping routes to have interceptions or jumping gaps to make plays or negative plays in the backfield on a defense. So I think that's what James is referring to, but we hear it a lot where it's just like keeping them sound, but keeping the defense sound keeps them, reactionary and not proactive, making plays in the backfield for negative losses or creating turnovers.
And avoiding turnovers is the biggest thing. I'm the first person who, after the Northwestern game, I was saying that, yeah, Drew Aller was check down Charlie, and he was taking a lot of check downs. That question was raised, but that we said it during the show after the Northwestern game, that's what the defense gave Drew Aller and the offense to work with. So he took it, and that's exactly what this offense is.
And you help out that turnover margin, like I said, by not predetermine your offense where defenses and defensive backs can get a beat on what's happening and jumping routes. Sometimes it's not a matter of turning the ball over. Sometimes you have opportunistic defenses that create turnovers. I have a saying, opportunistic defense equals sustained success. And that's what happens when you have those special players on defense like we do at Penn State, where they create turnovers, even when the quarterback makes the right pass and they can just make the right play. I think the way that Penn State's been calling their plays on offense has helped Drew in that aspect of not creating turnovers or helping the defense get a beat to make a easy read and jump some of his passes as well.
And it's a cumulative effort. Again, it's something James Franklin talked about on Tuesday. He said, quote, Aller is doing a really good job from a decision-making perspective, his accuracy as well. What was exciting in the last game, Mike Yursich calls plays that do have shots downfield. And if the underneath coverage sinks, Drew is taking checkdowns. That's extremely valuable as a play caller when you have a quarterback who will allow you to call shots and not force the ball downfield, take checkdowns, and still create explosive plays. His poise is excellent. He's good at throwing the ball away in practice and in games. When he does get pressured, Drew knows where the outlets are. It goes along with the offensive line and the running backs in protection fundamentals in the pocket as well. There's just so many layers to it. But again, to hear that a kid, a true sophomore, is in the pocket. Yeah, he's feeling pressure, and we've seen plenty of times where it's like he's getting rid of the football when he needs to. He's making the right decisions in 5 starts into his sophomore year. I get it. I get everybody's excitement. They want a Caleb Williams. They want a Trevor Lawrence or something like that. Understand that if he is to get there, he's just not there yet. But this is like, if this is the basement or even the first floor of the house, it's a really nice house.
Yeah, I'd definitely say that, man. Like a very nice house. And like you said, one of the crazy things about evaluating quarterbacks, like I said, some of the scariest things are elite traits, like the outward traits, right? Big arm, height, weight, speed, all those different things, because sometimes they rely on those more so than the decision making and just the feel for the offense. So the fact that he's showing those fundamental skills that you see from successful quarterbacks, and also we know that he possesses the traits and arm talent and all those things that make plays and actually win games when that time comes, just from a talent standpoint, I think it leaves us sitting in a good position. But it's always good when you know that you have a high level artillery and can do a lot of things. You want to see 60 points a week. You want to see the pretty 40-yard bombs down the field, hitting receivers and things of that nature. When you talk about a power 5, or not power 5, but a 5-star type of talented quarterback. But again, keeping the main thing, turnover margins, winning games, protecting the football, making the right decisions, and not taking too many or not creating turnovers, I think is what you want from your quarterback. And I think that's what we're getting from Drew Aller. So I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm very okay with the baby steps. Like everything's been good. So I think Penn State fans want the world. And that's
it's a baby
fine.
jog. It's a baby jog.
Baby jog. Yeah, it's a baby jog.
Yeah, he's doing a little bit more than stepping.
Specifically looking at this UMass game, and I really do not want to just blow past UMass. Yes, they're 1-6. This is an FBS independent team. They have had their struggles this season. Their number 1 quarterback was injured in September, so they're now on their number 2 quarterback, Tyson Fumachan. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. This team has 43 transfers on it, which sounds like something out of the page of Deion Sanders out of Colorado, or even University of Arizona. Oregon have gone and gotten a lot of transfers. 43 is staggering. But they have skill players on offense that, to the point that James Franklin made on Tuesday, would start for a lot of people around the country in FBS. Their number 1 wide receiver, Anthony Simpson, was at Arizona. Running back Kayvon Lynch-Adams is a Rutgers transfer, and he's averaging, I believe it's 5 yards a carry. He just came off a 20-carry, 157-yard performance and a touchdown as well in the loss to Toledo this past week. But yeah, he's averaging 5.1 yards per carry. He's already got 661 yards on the ground as a rusher. So like they're moving in the right direction when it comes to their tailback. Is it going to show against Penn State? I don't know, but he clearly has ability. And then they have 3 wide receivers with 20 receptions or more. Simpson is 33 for 566, averages 17 yards per completion, and 3 touchdowns to his name. So they've got guys in Simpson, Mark Pope, and George Johnson III, who are serviceable wide receivers, and probably more than that based on the competition that they're playing. This is a spread, no huddle offense, a lot of RPO. You are a little bit more aware of Fumachan than I am. I know he was recruited by Penn State at one point. His completion percentage isn't great, but he has a lot of potential and a lot of athletic ability. What do you think of the quarterback?
Man, that's what I was going to zero in on is Tyson, because coming out of high school, he was a power player coming. Where's he from? From Connecticut. Let's say Bridgeport, Connecticut, and just the multi-dimensional quarterback that can move, throw the ball, off-platform throws. Big kid too. I think he went to Clemson out of high school, but
then
from
Georgia
just
Tech.
Then Georgia Tech. So from the pure basis of a talent standpoint, he's a talented individual. Now what we got to do, we talk about decision making and command of the offense, and chemistry with the receivers and command of the playbook and all those different things. I'm not sure how he's progressed in that standpoint, but from just a base level of skill, he's got talent.
Yeah, he's played on 4 games. He's had 2 consecutive starts. As I mentioned, their starting quarterback got injured last month. Those were losses to Arkansas State and Toledo. In both games, he's had 20 completions or more and 31 attempts or more. His completion percentage the last 2 games has been 64.5% against Toledo and 76% against Arkansas State. 3 touchdowns and 2 interceptions in those 2 games. Sacked 6 times, so he can potentially hold on to the ball a little bit too much. He can run, so I think that's adding into the sack total altogether. Here's the thing that I'm looking at this game. If you're looking at Penn State versus UMass, you have to look at it through the lens of Ohio State is next week. You travel to Columbus. What about this game for Penn State? Can they do and can they learn from this offense that UMass presents to prep for what Ohio State does potentially?
When you think about a mobile quarterback and just a dynamic receiving core, I think it's going to come down to the lockdown you guys, right? The guys at defensive backfield. When there's just really tightening up the back end, or just like that's nothing leaky in coverage, and just really showing that there isn't any weak areas to attack. I mean, you're going against a prolific, top 10 uh type of draft prospect, and Marvin Harrison Jr. against Ohio State. So showing any type of blood in the water before playing a team like that, I think is something that you want to avoid. But really making sure on the back end and creating turnovers on the defense is something that we would like to see. And you talked about the running back having some success moving forward. Again, always making sure that you seal up the run defense so that there's not a moment where Penn or Ohio State doesn't have to go to the passing game. But I think that game, just looking forward a little bit, was going to be heavily decided by that defensive backfield and the receivers from Ohio State.
Penn State fans, Smack Apparel has the best gear for talking smack on game day. Head to smackapparel.com today and check out their Let There Be White tee. Also, there's Drink Up, Roar On, Saturdays We Are, and you can still get a Save a Couch, Beat WVU shirt. If you're watching this on YouTube, scan the QR code on the screen to take you to the website instantly on your phone. Visit smackapparel.com and use our promo code STATE10 at checkout for 10% off your order. That's STATE10. Again, that's smackapparel.com, promo code STATE10 at checkout. Why wear boring when you can wear smack? Are you looking for undeniably good hair and beard care? Then Maestro's Classic is perfect for you. Maestro's has beard washes, beard oils, beard butters, plus hair gels, pomades, and now body washes. It's one brand for every man. Visit maestrosclassic.com. That's MAESTROS classic.com and use our promo code STATE20. That's STATE20 at checkout for 20% off your order. Maestro's Classic, crafting a better you. Ohio State is at Purdue this weekend. They play at noon. Emeka Egbuka, another one of their wide receivers, has been a little bit banged up. They expect him to go, but they're not entirely sure. And then one of their starting running backs, one of their best running backs, Travion Henderson, has also been banged up. They expect him to go against Purdue. So as much as Penn State is going to get a taste of, hey, this is a team that likes to throw it around to their skill position guys, especially wide receivers, keeping an eye on Ohio State and seeing how these guys cycle back into the mix. For me, it's the receiving core and the skill positions that you'll face against Ohio State will be the best you'll see all year unless you make the college football playoff. And even still, it might be the very best between Harrison Jr., Egbuka, Julian Fleming, Cade Stover, running back Trainum, who is built like a Deebo Samuel, about 235 pounds. Like, he is a monster. Mayan Williams, plus if Travion Henderson is good to go. The big issues for Ohio State offensively is that offensive line cannot really get a good push in terms of run blocking. They struggle to run the ball against Maryland. Maryland's a decent defense, but Penn State's, I believe many would agree, is top 5, top 3 in the nation. And then Kyle McCord, good, not great, just yet. I think by Ohio State standards, certainly is a long way to go. The only thing that gives me pause now, Justin, going into this Ohio State game is that Kyle McCord has this new callus on him mentally, that win against Notre Dame on the road. helped lead the game-winning comeback and the score at the end there. Granted, Notre Dame had 2 consecutive plays with only 10 guys on the field, but he's been in a pressure situation and come up with a win for his team on the road, by the way. That is something that Drew Aller has yet to experience. You can point at the Illinois game and say, yeah, they struggled early and then they got it together late. It's on the road. Not the same. Not the same caliber of opponent either. That's the only thing that's giving me pause. And then, yeah, it's on the road. I think it's going to be a difficult environment, but I'm hoping there's things put in place this weekend against UMass that you don't show your hand of what you can do offensively and defensively, but you've got to be able to start ramping up to show that you can handle the strengths and weaknesses of Ohio State.
100%. I think it comes down to execution on defense, whether it's blitzes and making sure that you're creating turnovers, and execution on offense, whether it's the fundamentals of the run game, fundamentals of the intermediate pass game, and just taking some shots downtown and make sure that we can show that that's operating at a high level, regardless of who the opponent is. Because you're absolutely right. Going into the following week of Ohio State, you want the guys that even feel comfortable in their just approach and actually executing in the week prior against UMass. Because moving forward, I mean, I think we match up well against Ohio State, but going on the road at a hostile environment like that, where they're at home, you know, it's always a big game playing against Ohio State. You want to have the full confidence that we're on our game and we're not looking and going into the game where there's question marks on different areas of the game plan. Like, oh, I'm not sure how the run defense is going to look. I'm not sure how we're going to stack up against Marvin Harrison on the move. I'm not sure how we're going. No, we want to make sure that we're going in with evidence of impact from the previous week. And that's where you get the bye week and all these different things. So I think it's imperative having that sharp mentality going into UMass to execute at a high level to make sure that you're ready to go into Ohio State and compete in a hostile road environment, because they're not going to lay down at all, regardless of how well we match up with them. And guys play up to their abilities. I mean, I see JT Barrett probably play the best game of his career. We played at Ohio State when Saquon took the opening kickoff back and we were up, I want to say 17 points in the fourth quarter. I don't want to bring up that game too much, but I'm just saying when guys play at home, they tend to raise to a certain level. And when we're playing away, we have to put our foot on their necks and finish them when we go away. And I think to do that, you have to have that killer instinct. And that starts with this week coming off the bye against UMass.
And that killer instinct Maryland lacked against Ohio State this past weekend. It was at the Horseshoe.
And it got ugly quick.
It did, and Maryland jumped on them early. They took the crowd out of the equation, and it's like, man, that's the thing for me with Penn State. They've not necessarily been a first half team where it's like they'll really put it on you, something like that. I think the Iowa game was maybe the one exception, but even still, like on the scoreboard where they quote putting it on Iowa, you say not, but defensively they were just killing Cade McNamara and company, and that's the thing that I saw in that Maryland game is that defense had success. They were able to stop the running attack of Ohio State. If you're able to pressure Kyle McCord, he makes some decisions every once in a while that you're like, ooh, he turns the ball over in certain situations. Penn State's going to be able to take advantage of that. So if you can take the crowd out of the game in the first half and build a little bit of a lead and make them chase you, I feel better about that than, a slow start. Like of all the weeks next week against Ohio State. And I feel bad, Justin, I don't want to jump past UMass, but we're kind of jumping past UMass.
No, I mean, I definitely agree. I mean, it seems like McCord, from his standpoint, he's like one of those quarterbacks where you go to the game, like, look, fellas, he's going to throw us one. Like, we got to catch it. Mm-hmm. Because I've seen him play as well, where it's just like, sometimes the decision-making is a little 50-50. But when those things happen, we have to make them pay, especially on the road. Possession creators, that's what we need. And that's what we should be looking to do this week. I mean, looking to play opportunistic football on offense and defense against UMass.
Speaking of the defense, James Franklin was very quick to single out Johnny Dixon at the beginning of his press conference, and he thought it was somebody who's just not getting enough love. I know you shower a ton of love on Lockdown U, as we do all the time here on State of State. James Franklin said, quote, having two corners that are tough and physical They do a lot of good in a lot of different ways, not just against the pass. Johnny's a great blitzer. He's good against the run. Wanted to give him some love because it's deserved. You and I have talked about this on the show, is that you hardly hear Kalen King's name called at all this year from broadcasters because no one's going at him. But Johnny Dixon is getting involved plenty. And as well, you and I discussed it in recent weeks, him getting involved in blitz packages. He's been outstanding this year. What have you seen from Johnny that is maybe a step up from last year? What's been good, and what can he do better, if anything?
I mean, I think when you say what he's been doing, is just like the dichotomy of production. Like you said, like blitzing and playing safety some plays, making plays on deep balls, causing turnovers from interceptions, just to be able to show that type of dynamic range as a DB, even moving inside to play nickel at some moments. I mean, it's not an easy feat to do. And like you say, like you make the layups, but like having blitzes and tackling a quarterback is a hard business. Making an interception when the ball's thrown at you is hard business. So like for him to be able to make those plays and play a position like ultra confidence, man, we know that John, we had him on the show and he had the quote of the year for me anyway, is like, when you're better than him, just play straight up, right? And that's exactly what we're seeing, and like the different opportunities that he's being placed in by Manny Diaz. He's taking full advantage of it, man. Big fan of Johnny, and I think a lot of NFL scouts are going to be raving about him as the season continues to trek on.
And it's this symbiotic relationship that exists between the defensive backs doing an outstanding job, and them covering as well as they do has been allowing the defense to get home, to get pressures, to get sacks, to get tackles for loss. And I know those Penn State fans were like, hey, we haven't seen as many of those sacks and TFLs in the stat sheet as we did last year at this time. But the pressure is clearly there. That game against Iowa was such a good example. And also, second half, the way the defense really laid it on the starting quarterback, Ben Bryant of Northwestern. Not that they didn't get after him in the first half. Like overall, it was a very good effort, but still, that second half, they really put the clamps down, and they've done that consistently in every game this year. The second half against West Virginia, against Illinois, you couldn't get anything past this defense. Is that something, we kind of talked about Penn State has struggled to get going in the first half. Maybe that's more on the offense. The defense has still been really good, but is it those proverbial halftime adjustments that all of a sudden in the second half, it just clicks?
It's halftime adjustments, and it's the way the ebbs and flows of a football game, right? Like sometimes in the third quarter, the better team, depending on how it's flowing, should start to show their dominance, I would say. Like, right, you get through the home field advantage, the different culture changes of playing in the first half, how they're attacking, that's different in the game plan. Mid-third quarter, you know who you're playing against. Everything kind of settles down, and you're really starting to feel comfortable of how you're attacking. The one thing that we mentioned earlier is the defensive line to be considered elite, or even the defense is like really putting a stranglehold on the offense in that third to fourth quarter, where they really just start taking over games. And I think we started to see that a little bit the third and fourth game, when for sure passing downs, Penn State's defensive line and blitz and packages were over the quarterback quickly, right? Like there wasn't time to have a clean pocket. There weren't any moments where the quarterback wasn't feeling pressure from Adisa Isaac or Zane Durant, and just guys just making plays. So when you see that happening, I think that's a mark of elite defensive play, is when the defense can really talk about an anaconda wrapping it around, like the life around the offense. Like that's what we see, where it's just like, oh, there's nowhere to go. As soon as they drop back to pass, pressure's on them, either sack, fumble, interception. And that's what the type of things that you want to see. And I think we have the ability and depth to do that in the third and fourth quarter. And so I think that's what we're continuing to see, is just the talent level that we have from just a baseline starting to shine through in that third and fourth quarter.
The talent level is exceptional. No one would argue that. But one key thing, I think, especially for this defensive line, is that they have a new defensive line coach this year. You and I talked about it during the offseason, and Dion Barnes getting elevated to that position. You're close to the program. Have you heard specific things about Dion Barnes, like what he's doing? Maybe that's getting more out of the team, out of that unit this year than perhaps last year. No spite on the previous regime or anything like that. But under Manny Diaz, Dion has had a really nice gotten really nice production out of the defensive line.
Well, the one thing you have to understand is even before you get crowned as the defensive line coach, you're still having an impact on the talent acquisition, the development of the players, and just the culture of that room. And Dion's had his imprint on that room as a grad assistant, whether it's being a key figure in recruiting guys like Abdul Carter and just key players on that defense now. So like he's been putting in his work from my eyes and just the value that he's shown to those guys prior to him taking over the room. The room is just for everybody else to say like, hey, he's getting the full credit. But I mean, I could probably pull up a tweet that I said before he became the head coach is that he's a assistant coach on the rise, just based on how he recruited, based on how he coached, from me just going to camps and just listening to how he interacted with players. Sometimes when you see players have a successful career and they transition out, it's almost like they think it's a rite of passage that you're just going to be a great coach. And like there's an actual tactical information, tactical development that needs to happen. And he's someone that made that transition with humility to be able to stack up the instruction and educational information to be a great coach, and then use his time as a player and understanding the Penn State defense, his ability to connect with the players to make that, incremental rise in the industry. So what we're seeing now is just him getting his due credit for the work that he's put in. So kudos to him. So I don't know if it's just him being the head now, but he's just always been a dynamic and great upcoming coach to me.
He's done very well, it seems. And granted, no disrespect to Manny Diaz, obviously calling the shots as the defensive coordinator. And I thought it was something interesting that was brought up in the press conference on Tuesday is, the appreciation that James Franklin has for Manny Diaz. And I'll be the first to say, I don't know if Manny Diaz is here next season. And it's not that he doesn't want to be here. It's just that somebody is going to come calling, either to give him a head coaching job or hell, maybe there's another DC job that he wants somewhere else. I have no idea. But he is a coveted asset in the world of college football now. I think the stench of what the University of Miami football program is very apparent. I think everybody understands that. Nothing against Mario Cristobal. That was a hell of a blunder this past week against Georgia Tech.
Can't say nothing against Cristobal after that call. I like to protect the coaches too, but man, he had to take the heat for that.
That was rough. And that's not necessarily a program thing. That's like, okay, that's one particular person. But it's been proven, I think, that athletic department, the way that football program is run, that wasn't all Manny Diaz's fault. I think he was made to be a scapegoat. And last season, getting Manny Diaz, people were like, "Oh, okay, like he got fired." And then, like once you saw the defense start to roll, it was like, "Oh, we really got a good one." And the fact that he was retained, very, very special. And to have James Franklin reminisce about the fact that this program lost Brent Pry, went to be the head coach at Virginia Tech, and in came Manny Diaz, and the defense. I don't know if it got better or just stayed within its same identity, but I mean, to me, it sure as hell feels like it improved, which nothing against Brent Pry, but like, damn, that's great.
I mean, I think again, not to discount what anyone's done, but I'm a big I'm just saying I'm a big observer of people's journey. Like if you just look at Manny Diaz's just track record of calling defenses and being a defensive coordinator, it's always been top tier. What happens a lot of times with coaches, even just to compare Manny Diaz to like a Steve Spagnuolo, right? He has a top tier defense with the New York Giants, wins the Super Bowl, beats Brady, all those good things. And he was also a head coach and didn't have a great stint, and then didn't have the right personnel when he left there, and had some stench on him at the Saints. And now we circle back into in the right situation with the Chiefs, winning more Super Bowls and calling the defense. And everybody's like, wow, what's going on with this defense? It's just having a defensive coordinator in the right position with the right weapons and to be able to do his thing. I think Manny Diaz's defense, it just historically has always been opportunistic, aggressive defense, even with lesser players. So now that he has a premier talented players, we're just getting to see him, really cook in the kitchen a little bit. But I mean, just not to mistake, like a head coach and a defensive coordinator are completely different positions, and he's never lacked any juice from the defensive coordinator position.
I completely agree. He's done a phenomenal job for Penn State. This is an interesting point in the season in that Penn State's got a non-conference, lower level FBS opponent here early in October. So this is, obviously there's SEC fans who are like, oh, we're going to play Citadel in November. So it's just kind of odd. But looking at the top 10, a lot of things happened this past weekend. Obviously, Texas getting upset by Oklahoma. Not to mention, you've got some movement altogether in the top 10. Right now, it's Georgia at 1, Michigan at 2, Ohio State 3, Florida State at 4. Oklahoma jumped all the way to 5. Penn State at 6. Penn State did not move at all during the bye. Washington at 7. Oregon at 8. Those two are going to clash this weekend. So that's a pivotal matchup altogether, both in the Pac-12 and beyond. Texas at 9. USC rounding things out at 10. And then Alabama on the outside looking in at 11. How do you feel about where Penn State is right now overall in the grand scheme of college football? Because you and I have talked about it. They're keeping pace with the national conversation for that potential playoff 4.
I think they're in a great spot, to be completely honest. I think they're primed, ready to make that push after this little gauntlet goes through. I mean, we get through this, having some success, and it's going to be a hard argument to keep them out of the playoffs if we get through this gauntlet the right way, based on where we're at and how everybody else kind of cancel themselves out for the rest of the year. I really like where we're at, just coming off of the bye week and where we're at going through the season and the way that the team is structured and playing football. Obviously, there's some things that we want to clean up before we play some of these different opponents, but I feel good about where we are.
I agree. And just kind of forecasting ahead, the SEC has proved a little weaker than people expected. Still competitive teams, but in terms of teams that are going to crack the top 4, it's pretty much Georgia against the world. I don't necessarily see Georgia stumbling in the regular season. You have Michigan at 2, Ohio State at 3. I feel very confidently Michigan's going to beat Ohio State again. And depending on this game upcoming, Penn State versus Ohio State, that could be the critical one, is if you're able to win that game against Ohio State and see how the chips fall elsewhere. Maybe that's the key for Penn State to make it in. Oklahoma getting the win against Texas. I thought that was a great game. Obviously, the Red River rivalry was a ton of fun to watch. I just expect Oklahoma to stumble somewhere along this season that they have ahead of them. The Big 12 is competitive. And then if they do wind up playing Texas again in the Big 12 title game, do those games negate each other? And then both those teams kind of knock each other out altogether. Florida State, currently 5-0. I don't know who else in the ACC is really going to bother them. So to me, just projecting ahead, the significance of this Penn State-Ohio State game just continues to go up every day that I look at the way these standings are. And again, there's still a Big Ten title game to be played. And hell, I don't even want to look past Maryland now. I know I bagged on them the last episode we did, but the way they performed against Ohio State, Mike Locksley at least has some ability on that team. Team played well altogether against one of the best teams in the country. So I don't necessarily feel like that's a game Penn State's going to lose. But imagine the day when Locksley and company put up a full 4 quarters. They put up 2.5 really good quarters, and then it kind of fell away from them.
They'll be ready to play Penn State. I'll tell you that much. And that's one that is looking like a little tougher matchup than it did at the beginning of the season. I'll give you that.
Well, and I think you mentioned is, the proverbial gauntlet run for Penn State coming up. And I think, your intention behind that comment was, okay, you have Ohio State on October 21st, and then you've got Michigan coming up on November 11th. In between those two, home against Indiana and at Maryland, you finish up the season after the Michigan game with Rutgers at home and on the road against Michigan State at Ford Field in Detroit. So it's really those two big ones, but that Maryland feels like a speed bump that I don't want us to look past. Now that I saw what happened on tape against Ohio State, it's just, hey, you fall asleep in the right ways. What I think we should put it as a sign behind us when we do these shows, the quote from Todd Blackledge: it's hard to win in the Big Ten.
It's hard to win away in the Big Ten, away games. And again, playing in Maryland, they're going to come ready to play. Those are all the guys that didn't get offers from Penn State. So there's underneath hatred from the players. They're telling them that, hey, they don't think you're good enough. All the top players from Maryland end up coming to Penn State. Let me not give them any bulletin board material. So, no, it's going to be a nice, tough game.
They're all mad because they didn't get
because of me. God. I'm not even playing.
Yeah, no, they'll be like, listen, Justin King, it's a real jerk. No, I think that game's would be a little bit more competitive than I think we probably thought at the beginning of the year, but still a lot that has to happen. Penn State has UMass this weekend. We're very much looking forward to it. Just once again to reiterate, Justin and I will be live on our YouTube channel with a live post-game show, full recap of Penn State versus UMass immediately following the game. The video is already up on our YouTube channel, so you can turn on notifications now, subscribe, be aware of when it's all getting underway. We will be taking your questions. Thank you all so much for tuning in for that. The last time we did it for Northwestern, we're so looking forward to doing it again. And again, not to look past UMass, but there is a huge game coming up on the 21st at Ohio State. Everybody's fixated on it, so you got to clear this test first. Go 1-0, as James Franklin likes to say, and then it's on to the Buckeyes. Thank you all so much for joining us, and please enjoy Penn State versus UMass this Saturday. Thank you all so much for joining us. This episode and our entire library of shows is available now on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, TuneIn, and wherever else you get your podcasts. And of course, let us know what you think of the show on Twitter @TheKing1 and @TomHannafin. State of State is presented by BetOnline.